Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our YouTube Live Q&A. My name is Megan Martinez. I'm the Director of Youth Ministry here at St. Timothy's.
I'm Joe Katie, Director of Faith Formation.
And I'm Iggy Rodriguez. I'm Music Coordinator.
Cool. So tonight we are your answers of whatever the questions are that you are questioning. That's what we got right here. They've chosen us because we are available. Available. So if you would like, someone is manning the chat right now, so you are welcome to submit a question. We have some variation among our, can I say expertise?
Sure.
I'm going to go with expertise. So feel free to drop a question about the faith, about ministry, about favorite colors. I don't know, whoever you like, and we'll do our best to get to that. So I think we are good to go. All right, let's go.
Okay, so for our first question, I'm going to start out with kind of an easy one. So someone asked, "I love hearing all the singers at Mass. When will they be coming back?"
Yeah, I could answer that.
Seems like
Joe.
Iggy would be the best
Joe,
answer.
I think you got that.
I like it.
So we have been slowly assimilating more and more singers. Right now we have up to 7 musicians and singers, and we're hoping as soon as this is over, as soon as we don't really have to social distance and things like that anymore, to get the choir up and running again. So.
I agree.
You agree?
Okay, so another question that we have, how can we know what the right thing is to do is? The Lord on the cross said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." When I try to do the right thing, it seems like maybe I don't get it right.
That's a great question. You want to start?
Sure. So I think there's 2 ways to look at this. One is kind of beforehand looking at an action and trying to decide whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. I think afterwards you can look back on your actions and try to discern whether that was the right thing to do or not. The church has a criteria that they use for discerning what a right action is. And the criteria is you look at the object, the thing that you're doing, you look at the intention, what your purpose in doing it is, and you look at the circumstances, the where and the when and all that stuff. And if you can say that the object, the thing you're doing is good, so for example, like donating money to the poor, that's a good thing. Your intention is to be generous with what God has given to you, and the circumstances is during the season of Lent, that's a good thing to do. But let's say you're giving money to the poor during Lent, but you're doing so that Megan will see just how holy and generous I am. Well, my intention then is bad, and so that's ultimately like it corrupts the goodness of an action. So the church says you look at the object, the intention, and the circumstance, and if all 3 of those are good, then it's a good thing to do. And then kind of looking back after the fact, I think if an action brings about goodness, if it produces goodness, if it brings people closer to the Lord, if it contributes to individual good and collective good of society, then it's a good thing to do. If it's destructive, if it's divisive, then perhaps it wasn't a good thing to do. So.
Yeah. I mean, so I one time heard a priest, and I say this very carefully, but I did have a priest who said, you should just do what feels right. And I was like, that seems like very terrible and dangerous advice. But he had with the caveat that you have a well-formed conscience. So if your life is wrapped around the gospel, ultimately, it becomes a little bit easier to, I would say, be able to discern like what is the right thing in the right moment. And sometimes those can be really big things. So the bigger the action, I would propose maybe the longer you should discern it, the more you should think about it and should consider your potential responses or reactions or actions. But the idea is if you're living a life that's in step with Jesus Christ every single day, it becomes a little bit easier in some of those small ways. Now, doing the right thing obviously doesn't mean that it feels great, doesn't mean that it's comfortable, doesn't mean that it doesn't cause challenges or suffering even in your life. But that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing still. So I think that's an important place, even as you mentioned in that question, the cross. The cross can be hard. But that doesn't mean that it's not still of value and might not still be the right thing. The last trick I would add to that is to make sure that it's done in love. So anytime we make moves or actions or decisions, St. John Bosco said it's not enough. So specifically, he worked with children all the time, and he said it's not enough to love the children, they must know that they're loved. So if we're doing things that we believe are the right thing, but it ends with someone being hurt, it doesn't necessarily make it a terrible thing, because sometimes we can say the truth hurts, but it has to always be done in charity. Is kind of how it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Another question. Will Life Teen or Edge retreats be happening this year?
Perfect. Iggy, you got this one too? No. We're working on it, actually. So we are discerning. That's a word I like to use a lot because it means we haven't made a full decision yet. But we are discerning how we can make that happen. What adjustments do we need to make, and how far, if we adjust, will that change what we're able to offer for the teens, the experiences and the encounters with the Lord. So we are moving forward baby step by baby step until we're not. And that's kind of, I think, the way most things are kind of working in our world right now, that we take a small step, we see how it goes, we take another step if possible, and another and another. So right now we're looking at in-town options, both for Life Teen and Edge, so we wouldn't commit to being out of town. We know that that's a little bit of an extra challenge for some families, the whole spending the night thing. So we're working on in-town options that might give us the chance to allow teens to be at home in the evening, so that they could come and go if that's what was best for their family. So yeah, we're working on it. And I would love for you all to pray for that. How's that? Well, that's a great way to say it.
There you go.
That's good.
Okay. Let's just kind of get a question more directed toward Iggy.
Yep.
How does the music get chosen for each weekend?
Yeah, great question. We definitely, David and I, we'll read the readings months in advance. We'll look at songs that are on the radio, or songs that are easy to pray. Make sure that's directed to God a lot of times. Yeah, just reading the readings, and then he'll ask me, hey, do you have any songs that you want to suggest for any of these masses coming up? And yeah, just go from there.
All right. Another question. What is Catholic social teaching, and why does the church teach this?
Perfect. I got this. This is like Joe's sweet spot, so go for it.
So, a great question. I'll give you the potentially a simple definition of what Catholic social teaching. Ultimately, Catholic social teaching seeks to answer the question of what does God's command to love God and love neighbor look like in the complexities of life in modern society. And so Pope Benedict said that Catholic social teaching is the proclamation of the truth of Christ's love in society. And so it answers the question of, since we are social beings by nature, that God created us not as isolated, independent individuals. Certainly we're uniquely made, but we're made in communion, we exist in communion. How are we to live in relation to one another? It answers questions of what justice looks like and what social justice looks like. Justice you could really simply define as right relationship. So all of us exist in a complex number of relationships, and whatever we ought to do in those relationships, that's what justice demands. And so, for example, when you go to work and you work for 2 weeks and you get your paycheck at the end of the 2 weeks, assuming you have, you get a just wage, your boss owes you that money, and you receive it not as a gift, but as a debt of justice, right? Just same thing if you're married and you are faithful to your wife, that's not ultimately a gift to your wife, that's what justice demands. That's what's required by the nature of that relationship. And so justice is simply fulfilling the demands of relationship. Social justice is what that looks like in kind of the larger scale of life in society. And Catholic social teaching articulates the church's vision for what a good and just society looks like. And it's built upon a number of principles like the common good, the dignity of the human person, solidarity, these types of things. So it's a very vast and deep topic, but it relates to how we ought to live in relation to one another, how we are to put into action Jesus' command to love our neighbor, especially the poorest and most vulnerable among us. If you're looking for a resource, that you can find obviously sections in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, but there's also a document of the Church called the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church that is basically like the Catechism of Catholic social teaching. And the reason the Church teaches this ultimately is because we know that our ultimate goal is to get to heaven. Like we're made for union with God in the next life. But the fact that we were made for the next life doesn't permit us to neglect this life. In fact, the church says we should be active in this world in such a way that we fashion this world as like a vehicle to best move us to the next life. And without some of the basic necessities of this life being met, we can be hindered in achieving the greater goods of human life. So I'll end with this piece, but just to give you an example of this. So I'm a parent, I have 8 children, and 6 of my kids are school age, and one of the things that I do as a parent when my kids go to school is make sure that they get a good night's sleep the night before they go to school, that they've done their homework, that they eat breakfast before they go to school, that they bathe once a month or so. I do all of these things so that once they go to school, they're like best disposed to do what they're meant to do at school. And so I'm trying to create the conditions that are most conducive to learning. In the same way, when we act in society to overcome injustice and oppression, we're trying to overcome those things in society so that we create the conditions of society for people to achieve the highest goods, the highest good of all is union with God and communion with one another. There you go.
Bathe once a month.
Once a month,
That's
it.
all I took from that.
Each kid, it just gets longer and longer. But now we're 8, it's once a month.
That's perfect. I'll jump in real fast and just, if you're just joining us, you are welcome to send questions in via the chat. And Brendan Bell, our coordinator of adult faith catechesis formation, I screwed that one up. Screwed that one up. But he's here to catch those so that he can ask them for us. So.
And they're having technical issues, so restart your YouTube app or web page. Refresh your web page, restart your YouTube app, and the comments should come up and be able to comment. So
perfect. That was not Brendan either. That was our voice of the Lord. That just, in case you're wondering who's here in the room.
The 4 of us and the Lord.
That's it, is the tabernacle over there that says to restart your app.
So we actually have a question for everyone.
Perfect.
What is your favorite thing about your job?
Who wants to go first?
I can
Nobody
go
goes
first.
first.
Yeah, I
Uh-oh.
go first.
Iggy's got it.
Yeah, I love playing for Mass. I think that's probably one of the most beautiful things I ever do is lead worship, and listening, hearing the congregation sing back what I'm singing. No other feeling of, I don't know, just pure joy from where I'm at. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
I would say for me, I love my job because I get paid to do what I love, which is share the gospel. And specifically though, being able to journey with people as they grow in their knowledge and their love for the faith. Being able to, I've had the privilege of working with people who have been in a variety of situations with a variety of backgrounds and things that they've had to kind of overcome and obstacles that they've had to navigate to kind of enter into full communion with the church. And being able to accompany them and walk with them in that process is beautiful. Being able to be used in whatever small way to help people understand the faith, it's extremely rewarding to me because I find the faith to be so enriching and satisfying that when I can help somebody else see how good and beautiful the faith is, it's the best because it's just being a tool and somebody else being able to draw closer to the Lord and ultimately understand their faith and live their faith better is amazing.
Yeah, I should have gone before you on that one. Similar, I mean, it's the concept of being able to walk with someone. I think in my time in youth ministry, I've had some really privileged moments that perhaps no one else got to encounter with a person. A moment of clarity, a moment of healing, a moment of connection, a moment of all of these insanely beautiful things that I got the privilege of being the one that was there at the time. I've gotten to see and do crazy things that I never thought would happen. I've traveled a lot because of my job. I've taken on challenges that I never thought I would be able to do, and enjoyed them and found goodness and beauty in them. So I would say ultimately it's that. And then also for me, every day is different in youth ministry. So the other day I was setting up a 9 square in the air, which is a whole big physical feat. And then the next thing I know, my job is to pray with someone and then to articulate something about this and then to plan this and then to pack this. So every day is a little bit different. And every day is kind of like a little adventure with the Lord for me.
Okay, so another practical question. Someone asks, I usually put cash in the baskets at Mass. Where do I put my tithe now? What is the best way to tithe?
I've got pockets in my jeans. I got a pocket in my that was not, okay. Sure, okay, I got it. So because of the basket passing being paused, trying to limit all of that interaction, There are now by the doors of the entrances and exits of the church, there are little black boxes that are attached to the wall so that they're more secure. So they don't necessarily catch your eye all the time, but they do have a small sign that says offering on there. And then there's always a lot of folks that prefer the online option. I think that tends to be what more are doing at the moment. But if you have cash or you just like that, to me, there's also something good about the tithe, like the action of the tithe, having to think about that ahead of time and do it. So if you would like that, there are little baskets, and then there's like a little drop box too into the parish
Yeah, so
office,
there's
right?
upstairs at each entrance, there's the boxes on the wall, and then downstairs at the bottom of the stairwell, there's also 2 boxes, and then there's the drop box outside of the church building, just between like the main church doors and the parish office doors. So.
Yeah. Which, thanks for tithing, by the way, because
Yes.
the church is still working. The
Yes.
church is still up and moving, and it depends solely on the faithful. So we don't get to do what we do without the sacrifice of the community, and we don't take that for granted either. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay, so this question is coming from an 11-year-old. Why don't we just pray to God? Why do we pray to the saints?
Beautiful.
So
You've got an 11-year-old?
I do
Right?
have another. Maybe it's my 11-year-old. So that's a great question. So the basic idea here is that God has chosen to use us as instruments of his work, as instruments of his grace. And so you could ask the same question of, why would I ask Megan or Iggy to pray for me when I could just pray to God? And the answer is, I should always pray to God. God is a loving Father who we can always turn to. But there's a goodness in asking others to pray for us, because what God will do is, 1, he changes our hearts through prayer, and 2, God may place something on Iggy's heart that can really act and speak into my life that can help me understand my situation or help me grow in faith. And so the basic idea is that God uses all of us as a help for others in the faith. And so when we pray to the saints, it's simply praying to our brothers and sisters, it's praying to our family members. And we're not ultimately asking them to do something like, hey, God, don't tell, or hey, St. Teresa, don't tell God I'm asking for this, but, I want a new car. That's not how it works. Like, anything we ask them to pray for, they're just presenting our needs to the Lord. And it's no different than us here on earth asking our friends and family to pray for us, as it is our extended family who's now gone on before us and is living truly in union with God in heaven. And so God just has chosen to use us as instruments of his grace, as a help to one another. And so there's a goodness in that, because we're ultimately, as Catholics, we are part of the biggest, craziest family in the history of the universe. We have brothers and sisters who are constantly interceding for us because they want us to be in union with them, and they'll do whatever they can to ultimately assist us, including constantly pray for us. The reality is prayer is a mystery. We don't always know how it works, but we know that it works because we see it in action.
I kind of view it too as like, sometimes you ask other people for help. Maybe you ask your parents for something, but at the same time, you know that an older sibling or a friend or something, another teacher is able to help you as well. So why not ask for multiple places of help? Doesn't mean that you don't love your parents if you ask your teacher for advice about something. It can just be another way to bring in support for yourself, and then to bring this idea of connection, of family, as Joe's saying, of community in together as we all journey together for holiness.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of what you're saying, I think, yeah, a lot of times, you want to ask, you don't want to ask your teacher to fix your car, right, or something like that. So that's why sometimes the saints, what's that Bible verse where it says a prayer of a righteous person is
Very powerful.
a lot more effective or something like that. So, that's why I pray to the saints. I know that they're a lot closer to God than I am right now. So
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so there's a slightly controversial question. So there's been a number of people commenting on the comments of a priest regarding you cannot be Catholic and Democrat. What is the church's teaching? So
the church is very clear that as people of faith, we have to be engaged in the life of society in a way that's informed by Catholic social teaching, and we have to be involved in the political process. Now, in being involved in the political process, that's actually much bigger than simply voting once every 4 years. We have to be involved in the life of society and trying to infuse society with the values of the gospel. And part of that involves voting, and part of that can be done through political parties. And the church says that you can be engaged, and it's good for Catholics to be engaged in political parties, so long as it's their faith that informs their ideology. And ultimately, they become like a purifying and transforming force from within a political system or party. You don't have to be part of a political party, but the church does permit that. And the church itself does not take a stand in favor of one party or another, or a candidate or another, or anything like that. What the church seeks to do is form the minds and hearts of individuals according to the truth, according to the gospel, according to the magisterium, so that we then can look at a situation informed by all of these things, as Megan said, with a rightly formed conscience, and then have to do the really difficult work of trying to discern and pray and make a decision on what is in fact going to advance the good of society, uphold the dignity of the human person. And so, well, at times we do hear people that land on one side or the other. The church really stands above political parties. The church stands above those because no political party is consistent ultimately with the gospel message. And there's a variety of ways in which various parties and various ideologies fall short of that. So the church is clear that the church itself, that priests, can't side with particular parties or particular candidates, and instead their job is to form the faithful in such a way that we then know how to act effectively in the world to transform life and society.
Do you want to? I'll do a follow-up question for
Sure.
you. Perfect. Because we were just chatting about this. I know it's hard to have some of these conversations, but it's good to have these conversations. Do you want to speak a little bit about the clarification of what a mortal sin is?
Sure. So in order for a sin to be a mortal sin, there's 3 conditions that have to be met. It has to be of grave matter, which means it has to be a serious sin. Usually we judge what is a grave matter, not just by the 10 Commandments, but also by, for example, in St. Paul's letters, he at various places says, those who do X, Y, and Z will not inherit the kingdom of God. Well, if there's certain things that make us not inherit the kingdom of God, those must be pretty serious sins. So it has to be a grave offense against love of God or love of neighbor. That's the first condition. The second is that we have to have full knowledge of its sinfulness, meaning we have to understand that it's sinful. We have to understand its sinful character and the ultimate effects of it, or consequences of it. And it has to be a free decision, means what the church says is we have to have willful consent, meaning I have to freely choose to give it. In order for a sin to be a mortal sin, all 3 of those conditions have to be met. And if any one of those conditions isn't met, then it diminishes culpability. It doesn't change the wrongness of an action, but it could affect someone's particular guilt for an action. What that means ultimately is 2 things. One, 2 people could do the exact same thing, and one could be guilty of a mortal sin and one not guilty of a mortal sin, because one might understand what they're doing, one might not. One might freely choose it, and one might not. The other thing to keep in mind too is that means ultimately I can never know if you're in a state of mortal sin. I could look objectively at an action and say that's a grave offense against love of God and love of neighbor, but I can ultimately never know your interiority in such a way that I know what your intention was, that I know the extent to which you had full knowledge of that action, that I know the extent to which you freely chose to make that decision. And so again, this is where it'd be easy. Honestly, it'd be much easier if there was a way where somebody just tell me what I have to do in any situation, including political participation. But that in some ways would be a violation of the dignity of the human person, because God created us as free agents for a reason, because he wants us to cultivate our capacity to act freely in accord with love.
Yeah, perfect. And that's where I think, at least for me, the conversations that I've found myself in, specifically about this issue, is that it's so hard to know. And we like to jump and we like to impose. Impose is a harsh word, but that's the reality of it, is we like to impose where we're coming from, and we assume that that's where someone else is coming from. So we can look and say, if you do this, then that. But it's really hard to know someone's heart. In fact, I've been married for 7 years, and I still struggle always to know my husband's heart. And I'm sure any other person can say the people we know best, we still don't always know their heart fully by any means. So to be able to look at someone and say, I know that this is terrible and X, Y, or Z, or however it comes about, is a hard thing to do. No, there's a goodness and a value in, as Joe said, forming your conscience well and making a good decision. But at the end of the day, that decision has to be fueled by love, ultimately, I think, rather than fear or hatred. So if we can fuel our decisions, including in the voting booth, including in our families, including in our conversations about the voting booth, if we can fuel them with love and the gospel, well, I think we'll find that they ultimately answer themselves differently, that they answer something of greater substance.
And just to follow up on that, there's a danger always, I think, in people of faith retreating into their safe faith zone, when ultimately the gospel is one that sends us out into the world. And so even like, for example, like people making like Christian movies, that's fine, people make Christian movies, but like we need Christians making good movies, right? We need Christians making movies that everybody is seeing and they don't even know they're hearing the values of the gospel drip on their minds and their brains. And so the reality is, like, we as a people of faith are sent into the world to be a transforming agent in the world. Not to say, well, there's bad out there, there's darkness out there, so I got to stay in here where the light is. Jesus said, no, you're the light of the world. Go out there. Like, the darkness precisely needs the light. And so it's very important for us in all areas of society to find a way to get engaged. And the church actually says that it's the laity, the non-ordained, that not only can do that, but they must do that. They have the unique opportunity to kind of be present in society and become leaven in it, become salt and light in the earth, and transform it from within. And I think that's true of the political process as well.
Okay, here's another question for everyone. Who is your favorite person painted in the mural behind the altar?
Wow.
Ooh, that's a really, I appreciate that question. I'm in a weird way, I would call like a product of JP2. St. John Paul has been a profound influence, and I sometimes find myself trying not to say that because everybody says that, because that's who he was / still is. And so, but that was for me my most like, there's like a strong connection there for me. I had the chance even to see him when I was really young, and so he like speaks to me as a friend, I think more than any of the other saints in the mural. But so I went first that time so that no one else could say John Paul, because I'd be like, oh, JP2, careful.
So I was going to say John Paul II. No, I'm joking. So mine's a split. Either St. Peter. St. Peter was my confirmation name, which looking back, I realize that's like really presumptuous to pick like the first like pope, like whatever. But the reason I chose him was because he denied the Lord 3 times and then came back to be the leader of the church. And I denied the Lord for many years of my life, and God accepted me back and has given me an opportunity to play a role in his church. So I kind of just resonate obviously with St. Peter. But also along the same lines, for me, it would be John the 23rd, who's right on the other side of the tabernacle of John Paul II. John the 23rd called the Second Vatican Council, and just in reading some of his writings, I think his vision for a church, as Megan likes to often say, for a church that plays offense, right? For the church that doesn't retreat from the world, but the church that says, no, we got to go forth because what we possess is something that the world needs. He really embodied that in his writings and even his pastoral ministry. So, yeah, I'd say one of those two.
Nice. I'd have to go with Jesus. No, I love.
That's why he's older than us.
That was a trap. We failed.
I know. Come on, guys. Jesus.
Bye.
Or actually, I think Saint Michael the Archangel's on there too, and he's my confirmation saint, and I love praying to him. I love whenever I feel like I'm being led to temptation, Saint Michael the Archangel is always there for me. So I have to go with him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, he totally showed all of you guys up.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Dang, guys.
Feeling great.
And Joe, if you thought it was presumptuous to take Peter as your confirmation name, I kind of cheated. I took Peter and Paul, so.
Oh,
Dang.
man. That doesn't even count then. You're not really
Okay.
The second half is going to be a treat. For anyone who's hung on through the first half, y'all buckle up. Here we go.
Okay, so another question. Why do Catholics believe Mary was born without sin?
Because she was.
Okay, next question.
I was going to say, it's only funny because my answer is because it makes sense. Right? It fits.
So it is, the reality is it's not that it's true because the church says it's true, the church professes it because it is true. And the reason we believe it to be true is because God has revealed it to the church. Now, obviously we know that's not in Scripture directly. It does say that Mary is full of grace, that when the angel Gabriel greets her, he calls her full of grace. He doesn't call her Mary, he just says full of grace. One who is full in the sense of like remaining full, like constantly filled up with the grace of God. So we believe that Mary was conceived without sin. Now, ultimately, the question, so the simple answer is because that's what has been revealed to the church, and that's what has been believed from the earliest centuries in the church. But the question is, like, why would that be a thing that would be so important? And sometimes people think that it somehow, like, takes attention off of Jesus. Well, if Mary was free from sin, then she didn't need Jesus as her Savior. But the church is actually very clear in saying that Mary, in a very real sense, was saved by Jesus. She was just saved by being preserved. Like the grace of God's salvation was applied to her preemptively. We know that God's salvific work is able to extend through space and time. And so it's not just like all the people that were born before Jesus, like, oh, you were so holy, but sorry, you missed it, right? God's grace applies kind of retroactively to them also. And so in the same way, God was able to do that in Mary. And the dogma of the Immaculate Conception says that by a singular grace and privilege of God, Mary was conceived free from all stain of original sin. And that beginning part there, by a singular grace and privilege of God. Why did God do this? Because he wanted to. Because he felt it was the most fitting way for his son to come to the world. It wasn't ultimately by some divine necessity, right? That had Mary been marked by sin, that Jesus would have been a sinner. Jesus spent his whole life spending time with sinners, right? And yet God said, you know what? This is the best way to do it. This is the most fitting way for my son to come into the world, is through a sinless mother. And then finally, one other thing. Mary always stands as an image of who we are as a people of faith. Meaning whatever we say about Mary, we ultimately are saying about what God intends for all believers. And so, just as Mary was free from all stain of sin, God intends to transform us in such a way that we become free from all stain of sin. In the same way, just as Mary was assumed into heaven, body and soul, and now is in union with God there as a embodied soul, we too are called to share the resurrected life and share the eternal life, body and soul. So Mary always stands as a kind of a beacon and an image of what God is doing with the church and with Christians as a whole.
We agree. You
All
good?
right.
You agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay, so another kind of practical question. Someone writes, hoping for ministries to be accessed virtually. I know some are using Zoom, but only for the people who are currently in that ministry, looking for ways to offer them to the larger parish community. So in general, speak to what virtual opportunities are there.
So for the adult faith formation perspective right now, there's Lord Teach Me to Pray, which is a prayer ministry related to Ignatian spirituality. I believe they're starting up, but there's a phase 1 to that, which I believe isn't coming until the spring, if that's right. And then there's also an online Bible study opportunity that is available. If you go to St. Tim's website, to the ministry tab, and there's a Bible study section. There's an opportunity to do the Ascension Press Bible study, and then kind of connect with other parishioners who are also doing that Bible study. And so it's a cool way to, one, familiarize yourself with the Bible, as well as connect with other parishioners. But I would say, in addition to that, if you have ideas of things you would like to see happen that could be fruitful, reach out to me, send me an email or give me a call, and we can talk about what potential things could be there. But those are 2 things that are available right now. In addition to that, we also have our XLTs, which happen now every other month, I think, currently. So our next one is coming up October 1st, and that's going to be both an in-person event as well as a live-streamed event. So that's just a great opportunity for prayer, for praise, for a message, for adoration. So those are just a couple things going on right now. I'm not sure if there's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, from the youth ministry side, it's a little different. Ultimately, it's hard, and we're with you, and we're fighting our way through it too. Zoom has, or any of our virtual platforms have great things that they afford us, but also challenges as well. Ministry it hits different. So we're trying to navigate our way through that and helping core teams and leadership for different ministries be ready for it. And then knowing that each ministry is in a different place as well, how much can translate to the online platforms. Some of the things can a little easier and some of them are a little harder. So keep hanging in there. And then that's where even efforts like tonight, you're connected tonight, you're part of ministry tonight. So trying to do some of these live parish-wide things, as Joe mentioned, XLT, we have this. I know that there's been some efforts for the prayer group as well. And then even periodic things with the priest, or I know Father Shea has done a couple of just conversations with, and they've just been Zoom conversations. So keep working, keep trying, and then keep being patient and know that we're trying on our side too. So hang in there.
In case you don't know, also David and Iggy every Tuesday at 11 or 11:30.
11:30.
11:30. I'll let you talk about what you guys do.
Sure. Yeah.
What happens at 11:30?
11:30. So if you log on to Instagram, and if you follow St. Timothy Mesa on Instagram, at 11:30, David and I lead 15 minutes of just praise and worship. So that's just a way for you in the middle of your day, whatever you're doing. You can just pray with us. And after that, we post it onto our Instagram page. So if you didn't catch it, you can watch it later on during the night or whenever and pray with us.
We are trying to do a lot of things on social media now, especially under the circumstances. So if you don't follow us on Instagram or Facebook, we definitely encourage you to do so.
Yeah, and Instagram is tricky. There's some goodness to it. So if you're not on it, now might be a great time to start. My mom even started on Instagram. Hi, Mom. And so if my mom can navigate it, it's totally fine. She understands it all now. So jump onto Instagram and see them. And you can interact with Instagram. That's one of the things we like about it. So you can comment in, you can write comments in, just like YouTube Live gets us here.
Okay, so this question is specifically addressed to Megan, but I'm curious what you guys' answers would be because it might actually start an argument.
Yes.
Let's go.
What is your favorite condiment?
Condiment.
There's
Like
a correct,
ketchup,
there's a correct
mustard.
answer here. There's a correct answer.
Oh gosh.
I'm praying about it. I'm discerning.
There's also a wrong answer.
So here's the honest truth. Honest truth, full disclosure, I'm afraid my mom sent this question and that my mom knows an answer that she believes to be correct. And that if I do not say the correct answer, my phone, which is sitting over here, is going to light up. And I'm going to be like, so that's where I'm nervous right now. This is
So what is that answer? Come on.
I think it's just ketchup. Like, I think it's ketchup. Is that, Mom, am I right? Is it ketchup? It's not ranch. It's definitely not mustard. Oh, it could be someone else who, could be someone else here. I feel trapped by this question, though. Mustard is the worst. That's all I'm trying to get to.
Correct.
I preach about that often. I don't know. Okay, you want to?
All right, so mine's clear answer is Frank's Red Hot. Not just any old hot sauce, but Frank's Red Hot. That's where it's at.
I'm gonna have to go with sriracha sauce. It's delicious. Put
The
that on
way
my-
you said it with such passion and excitement, though. I'm going to have to go with sriracha
Yeah,
sauce.
yeah. Or I don't know if any of you have tried this, mixing ketchup and mayonnaise together.
It's a thing. You
It
can
is a
buy it
thing.
at the grocery store.
There's actually,
Yeah.
an actual, it said ketchup and
Yep.
mayo. Yeah.
Guys,
Our
2020 is
kids
wild.
mix ketchup and ranch, and they call it ranch.
Cranch?
They call,
That's what
So-
you can buy that too,
yeah, you can buy the
guys.
ranch, but the correct name is Ranch Up.
Stop it. Ranch up?
Crunch sounds
Okay.
better.
I told you the second half of this
Yeah.
is going to be where it's at, guys. We're just keep sending those questions in. Let's go. Brendan's got us. We're ready.
So the person that asked the question replied, mustard is the right answer.
There it is.
Oh,
That is
come
not my
on.
mother. My mother did not do that, but
Well, there's room
You've
for
been-
conversion for everybody.
you've been singled
So
out.
actually, this segues really well. Can
Oh
you
my
recommend
goodness.
where I could read about forming the conscience?
Oh, great question.
It didn't segue at all.
So,
yes.
I mean, obviously, the beginning places know the gospel, read the gospel, listen to Jesus' words, and pray. And I say it with seriousness because ultimately, like the Spirit is the genuine teacher of the faithful. And so what the church does is it becomes a catalyst for the Spirit to enter into us and teach us from within. So know the Gospels, pray, listen to the Spirit. Read the Catechism, obviously, as in terms of general formation, but in terms of forming our conscience, in terms of how we engage in kind of life in society and making moral decisions and things like that, I would say, one, the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church is huge. It's an invaluable resource that I think everybody would do themselves a favor to have on their bookshelf and open every once in a while. And then there's a great document by the U.S. bishops called Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, which is a very well-articulated document also that I highly recommend. It's at the USCCB website, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship.
Yeah, so you can tell who does which job here. Joe works with adults. I like to consider forming your conscience kind of like Play-Doh. If you take fresh Play-Doh out of the tub, container, whatever, and you drop it on the ground, and then you pick it back up, it's full of like the nasty stuff from the carpet. Even if that carpet was clean, doesn't even matter, or the floor, whatever it was, it picks it up, right? Because the Play-Doh is almost like glue to it. But if you were to leave Play-Doh out for any small amount of time, it seems, and then you were to take that hardened Play-Doh out and drop it on the floor, it no longer picks up what it touches. So forming your conscience is not a precise science. There's never a bell that goes off and you're like, congratulations, you've graduated, you formed your conscience, nothing can ever impact you again. But the more you kind of take in some of Jesus, ultimately, of the faith, of the Gospels, of the works of the church, of the saints, the Holy Fathers, you can see that your conscience kind of becomes a little bit more hardened. So it takes in less of the secular world, or it's more able to resist some of the secular world and point out and be like, oh, that's a bad idea. Like, you can watch movies and be like, this is not going to end well, sir. And you're like, well, whatever, they're going to do the thing. Like, they're going to tell the lie or cheat or whatever. And you can see that it becomes more noticeable. So forming your conscience is a little bit about like just allowing that Play-Doh to set so that it stops picking up some of the bad things in the world, some of the bad things on the floor. That's the way I describe it to teens, at least, is especially as you're younger, the younger you are, and that might not necessarily just be an age in your life, but it might be the younger you are as a disciple, the newer you are as a disciple, as someone who has chosen to intentionally follow Christ. The younger you are, the longer it takes the Play-Doh to set, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but you want to make sure to give yourself time and to give yourself some safe spaces. Another great way I like to encourage people to form their conscience is through community, through the church, through the congregation, through our parish, through other disciples that you interact with and engage with. So they can also help be like, no, buzzer's going off. This is bad news, or nope, this seems like great. Of course, it fits. Yeah. Anything else, Iggy?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say
You're gonna
that.
talk about Play-Doh, or
No, I was gonna
okay,
talk about
dang,
community
all right.
actually.
Play-Doh sponsors this Q&A, by the way.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna get some Play-Doh after this. No, I remember when I was just getting into the faith and surrendering my life to God. I remember whenever I went back to school and like seeing what my other friends were doing, I was like, oh man, like this isn't actually what I want to do now. Whereas before, I was like, yeah, cool, let's all hang and do crazy stuff. But once I got into the faith, I remember just wanting to surround myself with more of godly people. You know, it just kind of worked out that way, where I was just like, oh no, I actually just want to hang out with my friends from church, and it allowed my conscience to be, more, spirit and Jesus centered. So
That's awesome.
Okay, well, I guess we're coming to near the end. So if you guys have any other questions, throw them in there as you can.
Let's go, Mom.
But I have another question for just kind of going around. What is your favorite gospel and why? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
All right, so there's 3 of us, and there's 4 Gospels.
I feel
I
bad
was
for
gonna
the
be
ones.
left out.
So-
Yeah.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
Can we all pick the same one?
Let's all just pick the same.
So on the count of 3, do you wanna count to 3? Okay,
All right.
ready?
Mhm.
You wait. You know about it?
Okay, go.
1, 2, 3.
Luke.
John.
Oh.
What did you say?
I
What'd you
said
say?
Luke.
Oh,
dang it.
2 Lukes and
I
a
was the only
John.
one.
Dang. All right, Iggy, would you like to explain first?
First of all, my real name's John Michael. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. So my name is based off of that stuff of John and Michael, which is Michael the Archangel. So, but
There's about to be a lot more questions about where the name Iggy comes from,
Oh,
but
well.
we'll get to that.
way later.
I don't actually know why it's Luke. I think because I put John's gospel in a separate. It's so unique compared to the other 3. And then I don't know. It's just Luke. Today it's Luke.
Wow, it's the first time Joe
There's
has not
there's
known something.
Right? There's an earthiness to Luke's gospel that I like.
It's because it's Mary. Luke is the most Marian gospel. So Luke is where we get the Magnificat. My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord, and that's just my like, oof, I can resonate with those words of Mary. They like ring something in my head, and they reveal something to me. So just for Mary's presence in the Gospel of Luke more so than some of the others. That's why I picked Luke.
I should probably explain why John, because besides that, it's just my name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
We were just going with it. It's great.
oh, okay. Well, John 6 is in John.
Yeah.
So,
And what does John 6 say?
I am the bread of life.
Hey.
So
That's an
I'll
interesting
be
question. I
Eucharist.
feel like it would change like almost like every month or something. Like I don't know. I feel like it could possibly change.
For sure. I literally was just considering the other day, I don't know where this came from, but I was like, if someone ever asked me what's my favorite gospel passage, like my favorite story, I wouldn't know. And I've been praying like with some nervousness now for the past couple of weeks because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what my favorite story, like my favorite encounter would be. But I don't know. Do you guys have one of those?
A
Like your
verse or
favorite?
an actual like event?
No, like an event, like the calming of the storm at sea, the healing of X, Y, Z. Do you have like a favorite or no? I've taken us out of. I'm sorry, I broke the system, but now it's too late.
I love the prodigal son story.
The prodigal
Yeah.
son.
That is
Always my favorite. Yeah.
pretty solid.
I mean, it's all solid. You don't have to.
Yeah, man, that's. I'd have
See,
to come back to that.
pray about it. You're gonna be
Really?
nervous for the
I
next
know.
few weeks until
I
you're
know.
like, Lord, what's my favorite passage? I don't know. All right, Brendan, you can be in control again. You got it. So sorry.
Please, please.
Okay, so this is actually a good question. I think that addresses some kind of people's feelings right now, and I think there's multiple answers to it. When will it be safe to come back to mass?
the big collective sigh.
I don't know that there's an answer to that. I'll throw maybe a thought out or two. Ultimately, it is safe right now to come to Mass because of measures that we're putting in place to try to keep people safe, maintain distancing and proper sanitation, things like that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody feels comfortable right now with coming to Mass for a variety of reasons, or a variety of legitimate reasons. So I don't know that we have an answer to that. I think something like this will take time. It will. I'm no medical specialist at all, but it seems it will be here with us for a while, but hopefully on a decline. And so to some extent, like every time you step out of the house, there's always going to be multiple risks, including risks of illness. But if the question is specifically when can there be no limits on capacities at Mass and things like that, that we don't know. That is kind of decisions that come from the diocese in collaboration with the recommendations of the governor and a much larger conversation. So we're hoping soon, but we also ultimately don't know.
Yeah, I think I see it as a challenge too. I remember the first time. Even now, when I think back on what April and May were like for me, I remember. So we had done an XLT, and there were 5 of us in the church that night because we were live streaming it. And I remember coming in and being like, it just feels so weird and it feels so different. And the first Sunday that I came back to Mass, it felt very stressful. It felt very. I was very nervous. What should I do? What should I not do? Where should I sit? Where should I stand? What should I touch? What should I not touch? All of these things, because we have to kind of reframe some of our norms. So I've been kind of likening it to a shark attack in the water. And at some point the shark has disappeared. The threat is still potentially there. There's not a question about that. We're not disputing that. But at some point, people will begin to wade into the water. And I think that's what we're seeing now, is that some people are into the water in that sense of kind of resuming some what feels like more normal activity or to be a part of that. But at the end of the day, for me, I have to say that I think that no matter when that happens for each person, just kind of know that that first time back it might feel scary. And it's not necessarily because someone's doing or not doing something. It's just because we have to reframe. There has been something that's shaken things up, and so resuming these normal behaviors, just going through the motions, we kind of flag now, and I think say this isn't normal because it hasn't been normal now for months. But now it's what I used to do, but it's different. So whether that means you join us back for Mass this Sunday or in 6 months, I think truthfully, no matter when that happens, those first few weeks can be nerve-wracking, and I think that's okay, and it's a shared experience. So that idea of saying, when is it safe? Safety is kind of a question of what we deem valuable and worth it, and what risks, and each of us have different risks that we can or can't take based on what our lives look like. So, yeah, I think that no matter what, it feels a little shaky, but that the safety is just that we're taking every measure that we believe is possible and reasonable and helpful. So, yeah.
So we got somebody actually from coming to us from a very great distance. He says, "Hello, me and my mother are in Australia and lockdown, and we watch your Saturday Mass every Sunday morning our time.
Oh,
Praise the
that's
Lord.
Great to have more content." So just a little shout out from Australia.
That's awesome.
Shout out from
Thank you.
Australia. Can we put that on the board? We got the whiteboard because Joe writes on the whiteboard so much. I feel like after this, we'll let Joe draw what he believes Australia to look like. on the whiteboard, because I would like to see that. And then we'll post that on Instagram.
Perfect.
How's that sound?
Perfect.
I have no control over our Instagram, so.
I do.
You do, okay, all right, perfect.
Okay, so we still have a little bit more time, so this is a little bit of a more difficult question, but Megan, we have one that said, what is Life Team doing to confront and wake up teenagers of the dangers so close to them, social media and everything that's going on online, and being naive to the world?
I think that's a reason why I have my job, because the truth is that teenagers this has always been a challenge for teenagers, right? If we all think about when we were teenagers, we might go, ooh. There were different challenges, granted, and so we see those things differently through adult eyes based on our own experience and where we are in our lives now. So in terms of what do we do, there's a whole lot really that goes into it. It's not as simple as saying like, don't do this, don't do that. I think we all understand how that can work, and that those aren't strong motivators ultimately. So we strive for discipleship. That's our goal. Our goal that Life Teen exists to create disciples, to help teens to know that they are loved by God, and that love transforms them, and that love then calls them to a totally radically different life. And that calls them to give up some things, and that calls them to be more selective in some behaviors. But that also is a place where they can be called to, as Joe was saying earlier, to be light to others. So it's something that we drip in everything that we do. We're present and as a ministry on Instagram on purpose, because we see that as a place that, all right, if this is a world of darkness, how can we make sure that we don't leave teens alone there? We don't encourage them to log on to Instagram unless they need to, or unless they're already there. But that idea of saying, okay, we're going to come meet you in that place, and we're going to walk with you. And ultimately, there was a study not too long ago that it takes 5 adults to form every teenager into adulthood. So basically, I would frame that from roughly age 15 to 25. Every single teenager needs no less than 5 fully mature, discipled adults pouring into their lives at all times. So that means so Joe has multiple teenagers now, but so if Joe is like, hey, my kid's going off to college, but the youth minister that's local nearby, Joe may not have as much of a place as a parent at some times based on proximity or whatever. So that means someone else has to step into that place, to step into that place so that there's always 5. So that's where we as adults have to walk with teenagers, and that often means asking them questions. That means asking them, how are you? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What's going on in your life? What do you think about this? Rather than, hey, let me tell you the ways. Because while that might be true, and we as adults can often, I'll admit, see things differently, and we can say, let me warn you, let me tell you. There's a place where I think we're much more effective when we can say, there are things that are going to be hard, but we're going to be here with you. And that doesn't mean that you won't essentially scrape your knee here and there, but know that we won't leave you by yourself to fend for yourself in those matters. So those are some of the things. There are a few specific resources that we try to incorporate into their lives, but no resource can replace a person. So that's what our job is ultimately with our core team is how do we put people in relationships where they can mentor and walk with teens every day and help them to navigate and help them to learn, as we were saying, to form your conscience and to make those decisions for yourself.
Excellent.
He said my name, so it's you.
Yeah.
Cool.
That was good.
Well, if you guys want to check me.
No.
Joe's like, yes,
That's great.
also that.
Okay, so just a very simple question. Did we get a new altar?
Did we?
Iggy in the liturgy department, do you want to take that?
Yes.
Wow!
Wow.
We did.
Yeah.
What's different about this altar?
It has a symbol, Cairo symbol up front, and it's more sturdy.
There were some issues with the stability last minute. This
Yeah.
one also has a relic now of St. Timothy,
That's right.
which is really, really cool for St. Timothy Catholic Church to celebrate Mass on an altar with a relic of St. Timothy.
Yeah. So essentially it was just a practical matter of the weight of the altar top. The stone that was on top was just too heavy for the wood to support. So there was a practical need the old altar was beyond repair in that. So the new one looks almost identical, as Iggy's saying, just with the Cairo, and then the placement of the the relic inside is different too. So yes, good eye.
Another practical question, will we be offering Marian consecration through 33 days to morning glory this fall?
So not as an official program as we've done it in the past, but it is a consecration that you can do on your own on your own timing. So it is available, but we won't have an organized kind of effort to do like the Father Gately series and things like that leading up to it. I don't know if there will be a special mass where they do the consecration as they've done in the past. I think that's something the liturgy department will have to iron out. But yeah.
And those are places too, we say like, it's hard. In some ways the church has been kind of pushed underground, so to speak. So ask your friends. I would encourage you to, so even if we're not able to kind of organize that, ask the people you know, even people who might seem unlikely. You never know whose life you might change because you had the guts to say, hey, I'm just doing this random thing for 33 days. Would you be interested in doing it with me? You never know what kind of friendships can be formed or what kind of lives can be changed because someone might be invited to do something that they hadn't thought about. So you have the encouragement as well to do those things.
Okay, we also follow up to the previous question Megan.
The one about ketchup?
Not on ketchup.
Oh, okay.
So it says, so it takes 5 adults to walk with these kids. Are you accepting grandmas and grandpas as faith sharers?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely we are. Do you know how many teens come to ministry because grandma or grandpa said so? Usually grandma, usually nana, or whatever your name is. So I think grandparents have an especially beautiful role because the relationship with a child there are aspects of a parent relationship, but you also get almost like a friendship ability too. Our core team, we have all different ages on our core team, and as long as you can speak the language of a teen, that's huge. You don't have to know like all the trendy words, but to be able to say, right, what does every teen want? They want to be known, seen, and loved. They want someone to ask them questions and enter into dialogue, not to give a lecture, which is what we all want, really. So yeah, absolutely. If you're a grandparent, you keep going. You keep praying for your kid or for your grandchild. Keep bringing them to Life Teen, wherever you're at. Keep bringing them to ministry. Keep dripping on them the importance, because we see that. We see teens who show up and have conversions because of the witness of faith that their grandparents have in their lives. So you absolutely count. Some of you might count as 2 of the 5 witnesses even. I don't know. Some of you might.
So this is a question kind of takes us back to the beginning of things when they started getting shut down. Have I missed something? When do we do our rice boxes?
So
That's real.
the CRS Rice Bowls usually take place every year during the season of Lent. And so right when things were shutting down was in the middle of Lent. And so ordinarily they would have been returned on Palm Sunday. And we haven't yet organized a return date simply because we're not in a position to be able to have everybody return to Mass on a given weekend. So I would say your options are hang on to them and keep dropping some change in them if you want.
They're gonna be like
hang
so
on to them
heavy.
till this coming Lent and just kind of just keep it for the upcoming year. Or if it's really a nuisance and it's really bothering you, you can't drop it off at the parish office, and we will certainly take it and get it to Catholic Relief Services. So you didn't miss anything. It was just in the great shuffle of shutting down about mid-March. That was one of the things that just kind of didn't seem like an urgency to get back up and running. Obviously, there's an urgency for these organizations to still be supported, but it will be back, especially this coming Lent. We have plans to do the Rice Bowl again.
Okay, so this will be our last question. It's for everyone, but I think Iggy would probably be the target answer on that. What style of music do you like during Mass? Is there one that is more liturgically correct?
Wow. Yes, as far as music style, did they ask for like my favorite or just?
Which one do you like?
Oh, which one do I like? I've definitely loved the praise and worship, the songs with a nice beat, rocking out on the guitar. I love being able to pray, with instruments and stuff. But there's something beautiful about chant as well. In Latin, I think it's beautiful too. So we get to do a lot of chant during Lent and Advent. So yeah, we mix it up. So
To jump on that also, I think that we have to remember also always what the purpose of music in Mass is, and the music is always to facilitate prayer. And depending on the time and the place and where you're at, different things can facilitate prayer in different ways. But I was even having a conversation with my kids one time. We were at Mass at another church, and they said like, "Oh, I don't like that song." And I was thinking to myself, we should never really approach any song at Mass as like a song that we like or don't like. The question is, did that help me pray? Like, did this actually like facilitate an opportunity for prayer? And I think that just like human life, it has its variances of feelings and emotions and dynamics. I think that's one of the beautiful things about music, is there's such a great variance in how different things can speak to you at different times and in different ways. And so there are appropriateness for different styles of music at different times during Mass, or different even senses of music at different times in the Mass. But just realize that when you're at Mass and you're participating in a song, that participation is first and foremost meant to be an interior participation of prayer, to elevate the mind and the heart to God. And some music that we do at Mass will do that more than others at various times. But I think also there's a goodness in being stretched out of what you know, quote unquote, like or don't like, and what you feel comfortable with. Because there's a goodness in sometimes being exposed to something you think, I never thought that would be conducive to prayer, but here it is. It's moved me to this place of deeper prayer. So, and I think St. Timothy's, we do a good job of trying to provide people with those varying opportunities and avenues to enter into prayer in different ways.
Yeah, I would say that my preference, since Iggy, it was his question, but is similar. The preference is whatever leads people to pray best, and people are all really different. But you can feel, I don't know, I think here at Mass, at least I've felt at St. Timothy's multiple times, there's just a moment, and it's not because of a specific song, it's because of the disposition of the hearts of the people around us in the pews. That to me that's the goal, right? That's worship, that it steps outside of ourselves, and it's unitive, and then it brings us together as a community in our liturgy, but it also points us to God so clearly. So the songs that we hear him speak through, done. That's going to be the preference. But, yeah.
Okay, so I guess that's it for the questions. So.
Brendan's it?
Awesome.
All right. Wrap us up, Iggy.
So what's coming next, Iggy? What do we got next for us?
we have an XLT coming up October 1st. It's in person and live, so join us then. That's, I believe, 3 weeks from now, Thursday night.
Yeah.
Thursday night, the 1st.
Yeah,
7
October
p.m.
1st. Yeah.
Man, guys, we plugged that so good. That was great.
So yeah, so it'll be in person or live stream. So depending on what your level of comfort is, you can join us in person, which would be great. But the good news is that the Holy Spirit is not confined by space. So even if you're at home, you can still encounter the Lord and enter into an opportunity for prayer. So hopefully you can join us for that.
Cool.
And thank you guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. We hope to see you soon. God bless.
Bye.